Sorry, I was just.
No worries.
Okay, so we start at 1:15. So.
Okay. Ready whenever you are. What's the format, by the way?
I know you don't do slides.
I hate using slides.
Sorry, I know you don't do slides.
Yeah.
So just freestyle. It's a keynote. Tell us what you guys have done. I've seen some of the landmark things you've done in Ekiti, so just share with us. Whilst we're all mourning, Ekiti was moving forward. Well done. Okay. I'm going to start recording now.
Okay.
And you can shoot. So let me explain so some people are here on Zoom with us, and most people, we have a platform called Swapcard. I think we sent you the email, but I know you ain't going to join. So we're streaming live onto Swapcard through YouTube. So
yeah. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to mute myself and let you start.
Okay. So thank you again for having me, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope to share with you over the next 10 or so minutes just highlights of how Ekiti State government has dealt with COVID-19 and what it looks like restarting our economy post-COVID. My name is Akin Oyebode. I'm the special advisor to the governor of Ekiti State on investment, trade, and innovation. And I also double as the Director General of the Ekiti State Development and Investment Promotion Agency. We're building the post-COVID-19 opportunity, using Ekiti as a case study. I always like to situate the conversation from what COVID-19 has taught us. If any of us are weakest links, and that indeed, whatever prosperity or growth or development that we lay claim to will be tested by how we lift the weakest in our population out of poverty and how we strengthen and create resilience for those people. Because if you think about COVID-19 at its infancy, it was especially brutal to our elderly people and those with comorbidity issues. But as it became a pandemic, it started to affect even people who couldn't go to hospitals for regular checkups. We started to see that COVID-19 started affecting other ailments. It started to affect, of course, economic activities as states and the federal government started to impose lockdowns to flatten the curve, or at least to slow the infection rates of the. At the heart of this conversation is a fundamental investment in two areas: education and public health. And I'll explain what we've done in Ekiti State in these areas. In the public health space, we're very quick to identify, the pandemic and its possible effect on us as a state government if we didn't act in time. So even before we had a case, Ekiti was proactive in setting up an EOC, and we had an incident team meeting almost daily, even before we had a case. So we're well prepared when our first case was imported into Ekiti from the United States. But what that did was we were ready. We've also now, as a state government, invested in a molecular lab, which means that for a state with under 70 infections, we've tested well over 1,000 people to date. As we speak, our sample collectors are going across the 16 local governments of Ekiti State to collect samples and test a random sample of our citizens. And by doing this, we're going to have a much better picture of the prevalence of COVID-19 and even other non-communicable diseases across Ekiti State. Now, for me, this is an excellent research point, and it helps us as a state government to ensure that we have a full picture of the public health situation in our state. So just investing for me has been a big plus for Ekiti. It's also helped us strengthen our public health institutions. We are now renovating a number of primary healthcare centers, recognizing that primary healthcare starts at the local government, and ensuring that people can at least get basic care at primary care centers without needing to travel to bigger and more established specialist hospitals or tertiary teaching hospitals, as the case may be. On the education side, education is an area we've always agitated for increased investment, and COVID-19 has made that even more important. So we are anchoring this around what we've called the Ekiti Knowledge Zone. Ekiti Knowledge Zone is a physical space of 1,600 hectares, and it is designed to be Nigeria's first service-based special economic zone. What is that zone intended to do? It's to build a space where startups, technology companies, established technology companies can set up STEM spec, etc. We are in our knowledge zone, recognizing the fact that the standard of living in Ekiti is much lower than places like Lagos, recognizing the fact that there's also talent for them to hire from Ekiti and its neighboring states, to ensure that we can attract the right infrastructure to power our knowledge zone. The governor of Ekiti State issued an executive order reducing 1,500 naira per linear meter to now 145 naira per linear meter. Now, that significant drop in the cost of laying fiber has started to attract large-scale infrastructure providers to Ekiti. And we now have two companies, one a national telco and one a regional infraco, who have now signified their intention to lay within varying degrees fiber optic cables in Ekiti State. What we are hoping to do with our knowledge zone is to create a place where there is very fast and affordable broadband, there's power, there's a well-planned city, for lack of a better phrase, that brings everybody in, and it's within what we've called our educational zone, right? So it's equidistant from our tertiary institutions. The Federal Polytechnic at Ekiti is right next to the space. Afe Babalola University is very close, but it also straddles the Federal University Oye, the Ekiti State University within Ado and Iwoko. So you have it as almost like a hub for education and a hub for knowledge. Within this space, we've also designated another 700, not another, but within the 1,600 hectares, 700 hectares for residential housing. And we've just signed, maybe 2 weeks ago, an agreement with UNOPS, the United Nations Office for Project Services, and SHS, an internationally acclaimed sustainability and affordable housing company, an agreement to build 50,000 homes in Ekiti over the next 10 years. Of course, the knowledge zone will be the anchor for this investment, which means, and on the other side, we're also creating an opportunity for these people to live and even own their own affordable homes. So by doing all of this, we expect to now make Ekiti a hub for digital skills, a hub for remote jobs. We're focused heavily on things like business process outsourcing, back office engineering, data analysis, especially things like annotation and labeling for the AI and machine learning economy. And we are also leveraging the heart of the conversation today, the post-COVID-19 opportunity. One of the things that we've seen post-COVID-19 is that there's going to be an increased emphasis on remote jobs. With the physical distancing restrictions imposed on us, and with what we've seen over the last 3 to 4 months, it is indeed very possible for people to work from their homes. And we see a future where people will work from Nigeria and serve or work for companies all over the world from their base in Ekiti State. So we are certainly preparing Ekiti as a hub for what we don't see as not the future anymore, but what we consider the new norm. And so that's something that we are designing a knowledge zone for. And we feel that, or the opportunities rather, permit me to say, one of the opportunities we are seeing from what been a pandemic that has ravaged the globe is just setting up new hubs for remote jobs. We have a well-educated workforce. Our English is relatively toneless. We believe that we could be a massive hub for business process outsourcing, especially things like customer service, call center operations, etc. And we are definitely setting up Ekiti as a hub for that emerging economy in Nigeria. This is also aligned with the economic sustainability plan of the federal government, which has identified call center operations, business process outsourcing as a critical element for our recovery as a country. Our hope is that we can, crowding people into Ekiti and crowding existing BPOs to see Ekiti as a hub for business process outsourcing in Nigeria. We certainly want to rival places like Vietnam, the Philippines, India as a viable destination for BPO operations. I mean, I also speak to an area at the heart of disruptions during the pandemic, food security. One of the things we've seen is with COVID-19 ravaging the globe, we've seen that countries are now increasingly dependent on domestic production. I mean, who would have thought that the United States, for example, will be seeking to prevent US companies from exporting medical supplies to other nations. So it's almost a classic case of to the extent owe Israel as a country to ensure that we set up systems that guarantee food supply. And one of our flagship project there is something we call the Special Agro-Industrial Processing Zone. We are anchoring this especially on some of our staple rice and cassava, where we are inviting existing rice producers, processors to set up mills in Ekiti to process rice. We've gotten Stallion Group in, Dangote Group as well, and a local producer called DMK Jumla Foods. We are also inviting, and we have FMS Farms, Promise Point, Arrow, who are cassava processors and are converting cassava to industrial and farmer grade starch. Also, on the cash crop side of things, we are speaking to quite a number of to set up processing plants for cocoa, which grows in the southern belt of Ekiti quite well. And we're also exploring opportunities with oil palm, with Noza Group, which is a well-known local to set up an oil palm plantation in Ekiti. So in total, we are very keen to support agriculture. And we've seen, for example, that Ikunderi Farm is now being run by Promasido, with whom we have set up a joint venture entity called the Ikunderi Farm Limited. And our role there is to ensure that we can at least start to show that Nigeria can produce significant liters of milk, which is something that has so far eluded us as a country. So anchoring our investments on things like education through the knowledge zone, on food security through things like the special agro-industrial zone, gives us a unique opportunity to kickstart or restart our economy. The Nigerian economy is now projected to contract by more than 4%. If you think of that, that's a 6% shift from what was a projected growth of, I believe, 2.7%. So it's almost a 7% swing. And with economic contraction comes the immediate loss of jobs, because as the economy contracts, you then find that companies will have to lay off staff to respond to these kind of contractions. So we are certainly thinking in Ekiti about how we can put those people back to work. But underpinning all of this will be our continuous investment in education, our continuous investment in public health, to ensure that we have a competent and healthy workforce. Because that's the only way you can create productive activity, by having people who are healthy enough to think and work, and people who are knowledgeable enough to create solutions that people within and outside Nigeria use. So it's I like to say that in closing, I'd like to say that our role as government is not to do everything. Our role as government is to create an enabling environment. We have an ease of doing business steering committee that is constantly on a monthly basis meeting to understand the pain of entrepreneurs and to provide solutions that make it easy for people to do business in our state. We've identified 27 reform areas, 10 of which are completed. Today, you can register your business online. Today, you can register and pay your taxes online. These are things that didn't happen in Ekiti State a year ago. And we're taking it further. Things like planning approvals, things like applying for land, etc., are all going to be digitized. I always joke that from meeting every Wednesday in a room, the Ekiti State Executive Council has done more meetings this year online, remotely, than we've done in person. And it hasn't affected the quality of the deliberations. It hasn't, if anything, it has allowed us to meet more frequently. And regardless of where you are, whether in the state or in the country or in the world, you can join these meetings. So government itself is having to embrace technology, and government is going to have to embrace technology even more as a result of this pandemic. So I want to believe that as a subnational, we've responded to the pandemic with the responsibility and urgency that it deserves. And we are now thinking about we're now implementing programs that allow us, emerge from it with some sense of dignity and prosperity for our people. We recognize the difficulties that the lockdowns imposed on many people, but we now see opportunities out of that. And the final point I'd like to make is, if you think about tourism, we're also building our own domestic tourism opportunities. We've recently just advertised Ikogosi Warm Spring and Arita Waterfalls and Fountain Hotel, which today is a government-owned establishment, for private operators to come and take over and manage. We think that one of the effects of post-COVID-19 is that people in Nigeria are going to look for Nigerian destinations to holiday. It's going to become increasingly more expensive to travel. And people, just the risk involved with traveling, the restrictions, you might have to quarantine for 14 days. If you think about how long holidays are, it defeats the purpose. So we're building local tourism assets to respond to what we think is an opportunity, not just for Nigerians to know their country better, but to also attract visitors from across the sub-region and the continent. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope this has been very useful. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very insightful. I keep echoing. Insightful talk. Please, if you have any questions for Akin before it dashes off, he's very busy. He's just spent us 30 minutes of his time. Please pop it into the participant chat group. If you're on YouTube or on the stream, please, I'll give me a minute. I'll just check if there's any question. No question. So you ended by saying, I just have one question. You ended by saying that people won't necessarily have to travel because of quarantine. I actually haven't thought about that. I didn't think of domestic tourism. I just thought we'll sit down for a bit and then maybe when we get the vaccine, so having a proponent of vaccine and say once the vaccine comes, then we can start going, we can start to travel. Because I know it will get to a point where if you don't have vaccine, you probably won't be able to get on the plane, you won't be able to get, but I never linked it towards building our own domestic tourism because obviously domestic tourism is not something that comes to one's mind when you think of Nigeria. So that's a very insightful. And
I mean, thanks. But, honestly, and just to respond to that comment, it's also something that we have to market aggressively. I mean, the Ghanaians did the year of return last year. Luckily for them, they did that last year, not this year. Um, but if you think about what the year of return was, it wasn't so much the tourist destination. It was really more the sense of coming back. It was the sense of homecoming, you know, and it was tapping into what is increasingly a bigger connection, with the continent and with ancestry, etc. So a lot of the tourism conversation is really how you sell product. I mean, I live and work in Ekiti, so maybe I'm biased, but when I drive across the state, I see the fantastic hills, I see the excellent vegetation, the clear air, and I say to myself, when you go to Eastern Europe, you don't get more than this. The hotels you stay in are not five-star hotels. They even build a case around, engaging with the community, etc. So the festivals exist here. They have interesting backstories. There's a rich history, heritage, etc. So our job now is to make all of this work. I think we've spoken enough. It's just time to execute flawlessly. Thanks.
all right, thank you.
Hello, Akin. I'm sorry, I came a little bit late into the meeting. My name is Bukola Babajide. I'm from Osun State, but I'm married to an Ekiti man. So I don't know if you've addressed this before. Is this opportunity to, is it open to non-indigens?
Okay, I mean, I wear my banker's hat to respond to, capital, money, opportunities, they don't have any restrictions, right? So when we spend 1,000 naira bill, I'm not sure we say, was this bill printed by an Ekiti man? If it wasn't, I'm not going to spend it. So our philosophy in the States is very clear. If you bring the Bond Hotel, I'll give you a good example. The Bond Hotel in Ekiti, which was a $4 million investment, and is now one of our better hotels, is owned by Inze and Inze. I won't mention the name because I've not asked him for permission, but it's owned by an Igbo man. So some of the investments that we're seeing in the state today, Dangote Group is owned by Alhaji Aliko Dangote from Kano. So many of the things that we're seeing in Ekiti today are not necessarily established by Ekiti people. Many of our farmers are actually from Kogi State, Benue State. I mean, we don't discriminate in any shape or form. You don't even have to be Nigerian. As long as you bring a good opportunity that we think is beneficial to the economy, it is open to anybody.
It's open to anybody, so if it's not politics.
No, even though, I mean, again, to address that, our head of service today is really, she's, I believe, from Osun State,
Really? Okay.
I mean, for us, there's no, we have executive secretaries in the civil service from Akwa Ibom State, so, I mean, our government is forward thinking, I mean, I don't think that competence has to come from Ekiti alone. Of course, you have to recognize local nuances and create opportunities for indigenes. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where the person is from, and as long as there's no infringement of the Constitution, I mean, who says people cannot do what they want to do in the States? But our state is open for business, We're 3 million people. We're very aggressive for opportunities. We're very aggressive for growth and development. And anyone who's bringing growth and development to us brings it here. You know, it doesn't go away. So we have.
So where can one find these opportunities, or is that like a website or something?
So yeah. So we're revamped development and investment promotion agency website. It'll be up in, I think, 3 weeks. It'll be back up in 3 weeks. We're just trying to update all the information and, you know, change the layout of the site. But in a month from now, if you go to the Ekiti State government website, ekitisstate.gov.ng, you'll be able to link to our website in another 3 to 4 weeks. So just give us 3-4 weeks to put all of that online. You'll be able to access that very quickly.
Okay.
Thank
you very much. I'll tell my husband.
Thank you very much, Akin, for the question. And all the best. I wish you state all the best. And thank you for sharing. It's not all doom and gloom.
Thank you.
Have a good afternoon.
Bye, everyone. Thank you. Bye.